Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How is everybody today? All right, good. We got the, so you've had space between now and lunch, so I expect everybody to be awake, because we have two great speakers today, really interesting. So as a space nerd and a science geek, that's me. When I saw that we were going to have both the Department of Energy and NASA representatives at a panel, I jumped at the opportunity. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about how to do business with NASA. I'm Colonel Mickey Addison. I'm a retired Air Force colonel, and for the last year, I've been a consultant with Deloitte. We've got a couple of admin things to take care of. I pick up these things that come from the ground up. And just a couple of admin things to take care of real quick that I want to go over, and then we'll get into the session. So first of all, take notice of the exits. If we have to make a, I assure you, if we have an issue, there will be a way out of the room. Also, these are not exits. So if you see these doors, these actually go into an interior hallway. There's been apparently a freight train going by about once every 15 minutes. Please also set your mobile devices to stun or off so that we don't interrupt the discussion today. I'd also really like to thank all of our sponsors throughout the entire combined event today and yesterday and for tomorrow. We know we really couldn't do this without our sponsors, and both our NSBE, NVSBE, and SAME are grateful for our sponsors. You may be wondering why, if you haven't attended an SAME event before, your badge was scanned. SAME is going to generate a list of attendee records based on the scans, and that will be used for market research. In addition, those of you who need continuing education credits will get a certificate that's downloadable that will allow you to verify that. And you may have heard that the presentations will be available on the website coming up. So if they're not, some of them are already posted on your mobile app, but those presentations are great. So you can take lots of good notes, but don't worry about having to take pictures of the screen. You will be able to download the presentations. Take pictures if you want. I'm not telling you not to. And then lastly, this session is going to be audio recorded, and the recording will be available. You'll get a link in an email that will allow you to download. So with that in mind, when we get to the Q&A portion, and I hope you all have questions, we will have a microphone going around, and I'm going to help you remember, but please remember just to wait until the microphone gets to you so we get your question on audio so that when you download the audio from the session later, you will hear the question as well as the answer. All right, so let me introduce our esteemed panel. We have two great panelists today. First, Mr. Jim J. Green is the lead veteran small business analyst for the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization, OSDBU. And for the Department of Energy, he serves on the outreach team within the OSDBU office and advocates for the service-disabled veteran-owned small business program in accordance with Executive Order 13360. Drawing on over 4 decades of public and private service, having served 20 years in the Air Force, starting out as an airman basic and retiring as a major after 22 years, and then 22 years at Sandia National Laboratories. So we were talking about, he lives in the DC region now. We were talking about the gross difference in climate and culture between New Mexico and the mid-Atlantic states. I'll let you ask him which one he likes better. And Mr. Green brings a diverse background and capable skill set to DOE. Jim served in the Philippines in 1975, and if you remember back in 1975, that was the retrograde operation out of Vietnam, in Operation Baby Lift. His good friend Phil Wise is the author of the book Fragile Delivery, about the rescue of 3,000 orphans from Vietnam. His wife Sharon and he have 4 grandsons and 1 granddaughter that are the joys of his life. His favorite movie is Shawshank Redemption. And his favorite television shows are 48 Hours and Forensics. I see a theme. And he enjoys watching how the judicial system works and how it plays out. Jim's been in the procurement environment since 1978, 40 years, and has served as a contracting officer and a buyer for many of those years, both within DoD and Sandia, and now at the enterprise level with DOE. Mr. Green is a certified purchasing manager, a lifetime certification, and he earned that in 2002, has a master's degree in business with an emphasis in hospital administration from the University of Northern Colorado. Mr. Charles Chuck Williams is currently serves as the program manager for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Office of Small Business Programs in Washington, D.C. Mr. Williams joined the headquarters, OSBP, in March of 2018. He oversees the agency's SPP 8A program, Small Business Technical Advisors, Small Business Technical Coordinators Program and serves as the liaison to the Office of Procurement and the Office of the General Counsel, as well as the SBA Scorecard Manager. In addition, Mr. Williams serves as a Program Manager for NASA's Shared Services Center in Mississippi, Stennis Space Center in Mississippi, and the Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio, and the Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. And he did, you said 10 years at Johnson Space Center? 11 and a half years at Johnson Space Center in Houston. And so we were talking about all the astronauts that we got to meet during that time. Mr. Williams has an electrical engineering degree and is responsible for the development of guidance and police to implement the Small Business Technical Coordinators Program, as well as engaging the Center Technical Advisors in the Small Business Program. But not only is Chuck a big brain, he is also a skilled athlete, an avid bowler. He's bowled 3 perfect games. So that's pretty impressive. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panel. So first up will be Mr. Green, and he's got some slides followed by Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of my director, Charlie Smith, who couldn't make it, I'd like to welcome you to this event and talk to you a little bit today about the Department of Energy. We're an organization that has about 105,000 people, 95,000 of which are civilians and contractors. The other 10,000 or so work for are civil servants that work for the department. We have an annual budget of about $30 to $35 billion a year, and that's sort of the makeup of the Department of Energy. Today we want to talk about the mission of DOE, DOE OSBP priorities, and our best practices. The DOE Science and Energy mission is to advance foundational science and innovative energy technologies and inform data-driven policies that enhance U.S. economic growth and job creation, energy security and environmental quality, with emphasis on the implementation of the President's Climate Action Plan to mitigate the risk of and enhance resilience against climate changes. The DOE nuclear mission is to strengthen national security by maintaining and modernizing the nuclear stockpile and nuclear security infrastructure, reducing global nuclear threats, providing for nuclear propulsion, improving physical and cybersecurity, and strengthening key science, technology, and engineering capabilities. Our performance mission is to position the agency to effectively meet the evolving global energy science and nuclear nonproliferation challenges, national security and weapons production, clean up legacy responsibilities by employing effective management approaches and refining operational and support capabilities. Now let's get to the real stuff. DOE small business priorities. Our director has established what we call a strategic plan. First part of that is making it easier for small businesses to engage with the United States Department of Energy. What's key there is we have 36 sites across the United States. Each of these 36 sites are independent, they're autonomous, they do their own procuring. One of the keys I'll tell you right now is until it hits $20 million, we do not advertise in Fed Biz Ops. So you have to access each of these 36 sites if you're looking for opportunities to do work with the Department of Energy. Kind of a nuance as compared to the other agencies, but due to FAR 17, we have some exemptions there, and I think that's critical that you understand our process. Secondly, cultivating more productive and collaborative relationships with internal stakeholders. Chuck will tell you, and anybody that's been in the small business environment, you have to fight to get set-asides for SDV OSBs, women-owned small businesses, hub zones, and part of that is to create the right relationships internally to make sure that at least the procurement officers will, at a minimum, consider set-asides. Improving agency performances in the Small Business Administration's 4 graded social economic categories. Those are SDB, Women-Owned Small Business, Hub Zone, and SDB OSBs. The way DOE is structured is, in the OSBP offices, we have an in-reach group. They're primarily responsible for set-aside opportunities for small businesses through our quality acquisition forecast procedures, streamline acquisition planning reviews, improve data collections with the electronic subcontracting reporting system, the federal procurement data system, next generation, and MOSRIC. MOSRIC is something new. It's unique to the Department of Energy. It's in reference to the management and operating subcontracting reporting capabilities. DOE spends about 80% of its money in subcontracting, 80 to 85%. We have major prime contractors such as Honeywell, Bechtel, CH2M Hill. They're across the country that runs the 36 sites that I'm referring to. So it's key that you understand the makeup. So if you're doing business with us, you will be a second-tier subcontractor. Quick policy impact review and responses. We also have an outreach group. I'm part of the outreach group. Part of my responsibility is to go to conferences like this. I probably do 20 to 25 conferences a year to talk to small businesses about doing business with DOE. We do surveys. We host engagements. We will have an event in April of next year in Pittsburgh as a unit for all of our 36 sites. Hopefully you guys will be able to attend some of that. We track our successes. I have a customer list of everybody that calls me, everybody that gives me a business card. I track it all. And I try to make sure that I get a response to you within the week of the time that I meet you. Sort of statistically, what do we look like in terms of what do we buy? The big area is facilities, support services. We spend about $1.4 billion there. In terms of remediation services, almost $2 billion. Research and development in the physical engineering and life sciences, $6 billion. Other professional and scientific and technical services, $1.3 billion. Hazardous waste treatment and disposal, 1.2. Industrial non-building structure construction, almost $700 million. Research and development and except biotechnology, another $700 million. Research and development in biotechnology, $500 million. Colleges and universities do a lot of work for us, another $300 million. Security guards and patrol services, almost $175 million. This is our website. Our forecasts are on this site. One of the keys there is you'll see a generic forecast at DOE, for DOE, but you'll also see reference to the 36 sites. Again, each of the 36 sites maintains their own forecast tool. We have a little bit of a unique goal. You know, the standards are generally 23%. We're at 10% simply because of MOSRIC. Again, when you talk about DOE, you have to understand our business model is to have 80 to 85% of our work subcontracted out. Until recently, SBA did not consider our subcontracting opportunities as a part of the formula. So we had to work this MOSRIC formula to stop getting Fs. Every time we got a report, it was an F. So what MOSRIC did for us was create an environment where our first-year subcontractors at 22 of our management and operating facilities, we count their dollars, and that helps us to reach our goals. So our goal roughly was 10.2%, and this is a June report, but since then, we've reached that goal. I think we're at 12%, 13%, but this is sort of the numbers. Talk a little bit about the key, again, to our success is the management and operating subcontracting opportunities. Sort of what happens at our sites is Each of our sites have significant subcontracting plans. For example, if you're at Sandia, they have a $3.5 billion budget. Of that $3.5 billion, they spend about $1.5 billion on goods and services. Of those goods and services, they are required by contract to spend 50 to 60% of that money with small businesses and meet all their goals. That's structured in their contract. So when you look at 80% of the dollars going out, almost all of our subcontractors have that same responsibility of meeting these stringent 50 to 60% small business goals. MASRIC came about as the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2014, Title III, Section 318, authorized DOE to count first-year subcontracting awards from its M&Os. Again, those are only the unclassified awards. We can't count classified for obvious reasons. This is sort of what it looks like. Again, I said 85% roughly goes out to these M&Os, management and operating facilities across the United States. We used to have a map, but somebody said you can't use the map anymore, but they're in California, Idaho, New Mexico, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Savannah River, Brookhaven, New York, and if you're really interested, I have a card and a book up in the front if you want to pick up one that'll tell you exactly where our sites are and who to contact at the sites if you're interested in doing business with us. Roughly, when you look at the numbers, this is what it sort of looks like. Last year, $26 billion was roughly the DOE budget. There are some exceptions to that that have already been removed, so at the end of the day, that's what it looks like. In terms of our prime dollars, we had $1.1 billion that was directly spent by headquarters. We had about $1.9 billion from the M&Os that contribute to these numbers. So roughly, our prime contracting achievement was $3 billion. Again, when we look at our subcontracting achievement, which is sort of our bread and butter, we project 50.69. Again, the numbers come in, I guess, as of yesterday, which was the end of the fiscal year and the end of the reporting cycle, so we'll know exactly fairly soon what those numbers were. I'll talk a little bit about some of our best practices. First of all, know what we buy. We're sort of a unique agency. And I can tell you from 22 years of buying, I bought it all. Medical services, engineering, had a project one time to have bees monitor landmines. They can figure out where landmines are. I didn't know that, but it cost $1 million, but we figured it out. I've done satellites, I've done a little bit of it all. So know what we do at DOE. Again, register at the websites. What generally happens is once you subscribe, they'll send you a note as to what some of the opportunities are specifically based on your NAICS code. And I think that's what's important to you. Again, $20 million is a threshold before we're required at most of our sites to post anything in FedBiz Ops. Attend DOE small business outreach events. Again, we'll have one in Pittsburgh in April. Provide your email so that you can get a copy of our Gov delivery notifications. Review our online resources, sba.gov. If you've never had a lot of experience in contracting, I strongly advise you reach out to the SBA website and review some of the free classes that they have to teach you everything from cost and price analysis to just about anything in the contracting world that you really want to know, and it's free. Respond to customer satisfaction surveys. We don't know if you're happy unless you tell us you're happy. We don't know if you're upset about something unless you let us know. So both parts of that are important to us. Again, connect with the SBA, the Small Business Development Centers. PTAC, I'm going out to New Mexico next week for a PTAC event. Consider engaging with relevant small business advocacy organizations. If you're not a part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, Minority Business Development Administration, consider looking at those people in terms of vetting small businesses as possible teaming partners. We enjoy teaming partners in the Department of Energy, and that's helpful. Reviews the acquisition forecast. I can't emphasize enough about doing research. You know, I have a lot of vendors come to me and they say, I want to know something about that procurement. I said, what procurement? We got 20 million procurements and you want to know something about that one? You know, do your research long ahead of time before you come to us, because you need to know what you want to do. You know, we're not going to sit there and sort of spoon feed you into knowing what you would like to do, but we'll help you once you know what you want to do. One of the other areas that's important is our mentoring protege program. We're not part of the SBA mentor protege program. If you're interested in our mentor protege program, Mark Lockbaum, his name and numbers in the back of this book that's in the front, he handles our mentor protege program. We do encourage mentor proteges as part of our process. Consider grants, initiatives, and other funding avenues for small businesses. Connect with our small business program managers. Again, their telephone numbers are listed in the directory that's sitting in the front of the room here. Visit our website, the DOE website. The URL is on the front of that book. Network with the current DOE vendors. We also have some other things in DOE that's somewhat unique. We have the SBIR and STTR, the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs. If you're interested in that, let me know. Again, I have business cards up in the front, and if that's something you're interested in, let me know. We have FEMP, which is the Federal Energy Management Program, operated out of our EER office in Denver, Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And we have GAIN as well, and that's a nuclear program. With that, Pittsburgh again is coming up in April, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Williams.
Okay. Everybody's kind of quiet. You guys awake? You need to stand up for a minute? So again, my name is Charles Williams. I'm from NASA headquarters, Small Business Program Manager. A little bit about me real quickly. Have an engineering degree, spent 17 and a half years with the Department of Energy. Started out on the engineering side. A lot of folks asked me how I get to small business. I went over to procurement because I thought they didn't know how to write a contract, so I went to straighten them out. Got over to procurement. Then I thought engineers couldn't write a statement of work, so I'm trying to straighten them out. But I've been in the small business program now for a little over 20 years, almost 25 years, and been with NASA now into my 12th year. The main thing of our focus at NASA is to pioneer the future in space exploration, science, discovery, and astronauts. So we're really getting back into the exploration part of NASA. I'm gonna talk about how to do business with us, give you some unique things I think about NASA, and then we're gonna get into some questions. So NASA 10 centers, this is where we're located. You see we kind of spread out over the country, but primarily southeast, northeast, and kind of out on the west coast. For our centers, they really fall into two categories, and we kind of have two outliers. We have research centers and we have space centers. We have one science center that's up in Greenbelt, Maryland, Goddard Space Flight Center. And then we have Jet Propulsion Laboratory that's actually managed by Caltech out in California. So these are the top NAICS codes for those centers based on their dollar spend. Now, those are not the only NAICS codes that they use, but those are the top NAICS codes for all of our centers. See a lot of phones going up. If I need to pause for a minute, raise your hand and I'll let you take a picture. Next, so here's what we did in 18. So again, like energy, We're not held to the 23% goal. We have to negotiate our goal every year with SBA. Our goal last year and the year before was 16%. For FY18, we actually achieved 16.7% small business, and you can see how we did in the other subcategories. The two I want to make note of are the last two, HubZone and service-able vet goals. One of the reasons why I'm here is we're not making that service-able vet goal. Let me also do this as a caveat. I'm not here to sign contracts today, so please don't rush me about signing contracts. But that's the reason why we do a lot of the outreach things that we do, is so that we can try to attain these goals. So for NASA, our budget is somewhere around $17 billion a year. You can see in small business, for FY18, we spent a little over $2.8 billion directly with small business in FY18. This slide I put in the deck for a couple of reasons. One, total NASA for FY17, we did about $16.5 billion. Of that, 5.5 went to small business. The last part, to me, is the most important part. Of that 5.5 billion, 2.7 billion we did direct with NASA. Our prime contractors outspent us by $100 million, 2.8 billion that was subcontracting dollars. So what am I trying to tell you? There are a lot of opportunities with our prime contractors. So if you don't get a prime contract with NASA, subcontracting, as Jim, there are opportunities with the subcontractors as well. Here are our top 20 prime contractors for FY17 for NASA. You can see at the top, Caltech, they manage the JPL facility out in California. You may notice some of the ones below that, Boeing, Lockheed, SpaceX, Orbital, Jacobs, and so on down the list. But these are top 10, and you can see what they're actually receiving from NASA, over $11 billion to these 20 prime contractors. So if you have a relationship, a lot of these companies have contracts with more than one NASA center. No phones, go to the next one. So here are our keys to trying to do business with NASA. 5 Ps. Preparation. He mentioned doing your research. Again, focus, know your customer, do your homework. Every NASA center doesn't do the same thing. At Johnson Space Center, I can tell you how many times folks came in and wanted to see where we launched spacecraft from. We don't launch spacecraft in Houston. That's at Kennedy Space Center. We control them once they leave the tower, but they don't launch in Houston. So again, knowing what the center does, every center does not do the same thing. Houston, they do human exploration. Marshall Space Flight Center, propulsion systems, and so on. Every center does something different, so know what your customer does. The other thing, we don't do contracts because you're a small business. We do contracts because you can help us meet our mission and you provide us a solution. A lot of firms, the first thing you do when you go up and you do market research, I'm a woman on HubZone 8A service-able vet. Please move on to the main course of the meal. That's why we're here. We know you're small businesses. What we don't know is what are your capabilities. Tell me what your capabilities are so we can try to match you with the right facility or the right contractor that may have a need for your capabilities. The next one, our administrator is big on this. It's about relationships. You're here to meet people at the agencies, at large primes, so they can get to know you. What are you doing? Trying to develop a relationship. You do business with people you know. Developing relationships, and again, one of the things we say at NASA, don't stalk us. If you call too many times, we put you on do not call anymore, do not accept. But you want to develop a relationship, let folks know, and again, as I stated earlier, don't come in, I'm an IT firm. You know how many IT firms out there? I'm an engineering firm. What is it specifically that you're interested in, you're capable of, what contract are you looking at? Next one, patience, long term. The government does not do anything quickly. Let me repeat that again for those who are asleep. The government does not do anything quick. So at NASA, we tell most folks, small businesses, if this is your first time contacting NASA, you need to be willing to invest at least 1.5 to 2 years 1.5 to 2 years, 16 months to 24 months. I'm not going to get into days and hours, but you can figure that out. It takes time to build a relationship before you can find something where, now I found an opportunity, I'm ready to pursue that opportunity. Again, after 2 years, it does not mean you have a contract with an agency, but you've built a relationship. You should know enough about that organization where you fit in and how you can support them. Okay? Persistence, again, don't be a pest. We get hundreds of emails every day. If you don't hear something from me in 2 days, don't start sending me an email every day. We can block emails too. But be persistent. But when you call, have a reason for your call. If you just want to say hello to me, just wait till you see me at an event like this and say hello. Okay? Performance. With small businesses, and I started to take this off, but I still think it's important. Most of the small businesses we do business with do exceed customer expectations. But going into a contract, that should be your goal. I'm not just here to perform, I'm here to outperform. Whatever their expectations are, always strive to exceed their expectations. Again, we mentioned doing your homework. Here's some websites that you can go to. So a couple on here that I did want to highlight. One is the fourth bullet down, the strategic plan and budget. If you want to know where we're spending our money, you need to read that report. I will tell you, it'll make you sleepy, but you need to read that report. This breaks out where we get our allocations for money, where we're going to spend it. The next one that I wanted to highlight is the last bullet, and that's the NASA vendor database. So we created our own database, and these are firms that we know specifically are interested in doing business with NASA. I will tell you, started this fiscal year, all of our contracting officers will now go to this database first when they get ready to do their market research. So we're going to look for firms here first. If we don't find them, then we'll go to the dynamic small business search and other places. So if you're interested in NASA, you definitely need to be registered in this database. I see some phones going up, so pause. Okay? Business opportunities. Every federal agency has an acquisition forecast. That's the link to our acquisition forecast. The second bullet, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this a little bit later in my presentation. So we created what we call a NASA active contracts list. Your government uses acronyms. We call them ACL sheets. And I'll show you a little bit more about that and talk about our mobile app a little bit further into the presentation. Everybody knows about federal opportunity, FedBiz Ops. The last one, I don't think a lot of small businesses use, and that's FPDS, NG. So this is where, there's that train. This is where every federal government, every contract, we have to put it in there, what we're spending, every mod. It's a public system. You can go in there and do a lot of market research to find out about contracts and what we're spending on those contracts. You can look at them by NAICS code, you can look at them by agency, you put contractors' names in there. There are a lot of ways you can search. If you've never used it, it's a tremendous tool to use. Here's some of your key resources, and you've heard some of these. SBA, SAM, PTAC is another organization that we also refer a lot of firms to and a lot of folks to. They're small business development centers, business partners network. There are a lot of organizations out there, and some of them offer free training. They will provide consultants that will help you with a lot of things from business development to marketing to proposal writing to doing cost proposals. They will assist you with a lot of those type things. Our NASA vendor database. So far, registered in our database, we have a little over 4,000 businesses registered. Since April, about 142 have registered. A little over 2,100 of those businesses, we have a module in where you can select to be a subcontractor. About half of the folks registered have selected to be a subcontractor. Well, what does that mean for you? If you check that box, all of our prime contractors can also go into this database, and they see all of those folks that have checked the box that are interested in being a subcontractor. If you're not interested, you don't check that box, the primes will never see your information. But again, it's another way for your firm's name and capabilities to get out without you having to chase down the prime contractors. Okay? Here's kind of the breakdown of the small businesses that are in the NASA vendor database. So if you go down to the second to the last line, veteran-owned small businesses. Service-able vet is right after large business. I like to see those numbers go up. Again, we're going to be using it for market research. So if you're interested in NASA, we're at booth 761. We have a card over there that tells you how to get registered and everything in the database. Please come by, get a card, make sure you get registered in the NASA vendor database. Here's some of the outreach things that we're going to be doing. So the one, October 23rd through the 25th, we've already had that. That was at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. That was last week. The last two, NASA is starting to do more regional outreach events. So we're going to have one in Phoenix, Arizona. That's going to be in March. And then in July, we'll be in San Diego, California for a regional outreach event. So you can go to our website. We'll have more details on how to register for those events as well. As mentioned by my colleague from DOE, so we also have a Mentor Protege program, and we're not a part of the SBA Mentor Protege program. So we were one of 4 agencies that were exempt from having to follow up under that program. But we do highly encourage our primes to enter into Mentor Protege agreements. These are some of the benefits that we have here. And then there's the FAR link, and we also have a NASA FAR sub that talks about how we do our Mentor Protege program. So a couple of things that are kind of unique about our program. Our primes, some of our mentors are Phase 3 SBIR contractors. And also under our program, HBCUs and minority serving institutions can be mentored under our program. So we're a little bit different from a lot of the other agencies when it comes to the Mentor Protege program. Again, as I mentioned, there are 3 other agencies, us, DHS, and DOE. We were the 3 that were received approval to have our standalone programs. Now, DOD and FAA, of course, they're a little bit different from everyone else, but they're not included under the SBA program as well. Here's the key thing. If you don't take anything away from today that I say today, please take this. We've created our own app. It is now available on Android as well as Apple products. So you can download it. I have a brochure at the booth 761, tells you how to get the information. There's a ton of information that's included on this app. One of the things about the app, we update it quarterly. So instead of having to wait for a piece of paper, instead of having to go around trying to log on to a website or get to a website, if you have the app, you'll have the information. So some of the information is located there. We have a map that has all of our 10 centers. Have little pins. If you click the pin, it'll pull up all of our small business points of contact for that particular facility. Has a telephone number, email address, all the information is located there. If you're interested in knowing who the PCR, or the ombudsman, or the technical advisor, they're also located there. So all of that information is at that center, on that app. Also, if you wanted to set up a meeting, phone call, you can do it directly from the app. So again, a lot of great information on the app. I would demonstrate it to you, but I couldn't demonstrate it to you here. But here's some of the screenshots that you'll get from our mobile app. And that's kind of hard to see. I think I have a better shot. So some of the things on here, I mentioned the ACL sheets, active contracts listing sheets. So these sheets, they're spreadsheets. These are contracts that we know come up every 5 years. They're recurring contracts. And some of them will actually have, if it's in the RFP stage where we're competing it, we'll have the RFP information listed. What we intended this for here is for your long-term planning. And what do we mean by that? We tell you when that contract is going to end. So if a contract is ending in FY19 or 2019, if you're actually pursuing that contract, you're kind of way behind the 8 ball. Because as far as talking to technical folks, they're not available. You're only going to be able to talk to a procurement officer or someone like that. If you look at things that are 2 years out, 3 years out, you can talk to that project lead. You can talk to the technical organization who has the requirement, who has the need. So the further out you go, you can start talking to technical folks to understand the statement of work, what they're looking for, any issues they're having. The closer we get to when that contract ends, you're gonna start talking to business folks. So you won't be able to talk technical at all, okay? On the app, the ACL sheet, so here are, I think it's like 10 or 12. These are the different industries that we created ACL sheets for. Accounting, administrative, environmental, facilities, engineering. Engineering at Goddard only, that's in Maryland. The reason why we did that, they probably issue more engineering contracts that are small business set aside than any other NASA center. So they have their own ACL sheet. Information technology, we have one just for Goddard. Multiple award, general construction, occupational health, office supplies, and protective services. So if you fall into any one of those on the app, we have all of the contracts that come up every 5 years in those particular areas. What do they look like? This is what it looks like. Now, this is kind of an eye chart. I don't know if this is a laser. Yeah. So in the first column, that's the center where the contract is located, the NAICS code that we use, the name of the contract, who has the contract now, how do we compete for that contract? 8A, small business set aside, what's the potential value of the contract? And the last column, when does that contract ultimately expire? So we give you all of that information. So again, we were saying do your research. We did some of it for you. And this is about as far as NASA's gonna go for you. So we did a lot of your homework for you. If you can't take this and set your own targets, we may not be the agency you wanna do business with. I'm just saying. One of the things I mentioned, knowing all of the NASA centers, they all do something different. So if you look at here, the first 3 are research centers. The next one is Goddard Space Flight Center, which is our science center. If you just look at the first bullet on each one, they're not related. They don't cross. So if you're interested in flight research, why would you be talking to Goddard Space Flight Center? Or Kennedy Space Flight Center? You really should be talking to Armstrong. So again, specific when you come to talk to us, do your homework, do your research, know what the different centers buy. Here, the next ones, and these slides are going to be available, so this is one of the reasons why I put it in here, and I also put a link to each one of the centers so you can go directly to their website to get more information about the things that they actually do at that particular center. And these are our last 3. Oh, I had 3 more, sorry. So, that's my presentation. This is my contact information, and I guess now it's time for questions and answers.
Oh, great. All right, first of all, let's have just a quick round of applause for our panelists. These are great presentations, aren't they? And I hope you do have a chance to either catch them on the exhibit floor or afterwards or sometime, because these guys have had amazing careers and they're a joy to talk to. So just as a reminder, we do have a microphone. So if I'll start a question off first for each of you to answer briefly while everybody's kind of gathering themselves and getting ready. And that is, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give a firm in trying to do business with each of your agencies? And we'll start right here with Mr. Green.
I think the first thing I'd give you is do your homework, do some research, understand where our money flows and how it flows. You know, you can't violate the Anti-Deficiency Act by spending money that you don't have. So one of the keys, I think, is following the money, especially when you're dealing with the 36 sites that we have at the Department of Energy and headquarters. The other thing I would say, just as Charles said, is you need to have a relationship. You know, you're not going to cut your teeth at the Department of Energy. Believe me, you're not going to be a nuclear weapons guru and expect to get work. So Take into account being a subcontractor, work towards being a prime contractor or the lead subcontractor on some of our events. The other thing is cheerful persistence. I can't say that enough. You know, he calls it persistence. I say cheerful persistence. Don't go hollering at a contracting officer, contract specialist, and expect to get a good favor next time, because I'm gonna tell you, when you're looking at small purchases under the SAT threshold, especially in the Department of Energy, when I was a buyer sitting at Sandia, if I knew you, I called you. If I didn't know you, hey, sorry. So you want to create that relationship that says, hey, Jim's going to call me next week or week after next when he has a requirement, and I'm going to be as cheerful as I can, and we're going to be able to do some business. But I think those are some of the things that I would leave for you, is that know where the money is. That's key, because if we don't have money, we can't play. And secondly, be nice to the people out there, because they can either help you or hurt you.
That's a good one. I would probably say the same thing. I probably would add a couple of different things. So one of the things I would say, especially if you're dealing with an agency that doesn't do a lot of M&O contracting like energy, we get a lot of firms that come in and they know we have a contract, but when they come in, they're just interested in the contract. How are you going to help us? I mean, we're no different than any other business. We're trying to save money, we're trying to be efficient, and we're trying to meet our mission, our technical mission. And when you come in, if that's not what you're trying to help us do, why would we want to do business with you? The other thing is, don't try to be the jack of all trades. I've met a couple of companies, and we used to get this all the time. Well, what do you need? What is it that you do? I can do anything that you need. No, that's the wrong answer. The right answer is, here's what I do better than anybody else. If you mow grass and I say I want it 3 inches, I want to go outside and put a ruler in the ground, and I want it to be at 3 inches. One of the things I tell a lot of firms now is, one of the things I learned about NASA is we will only contract with the best of the best. And I don't care whether you're a janitorial service company, whether you're a grounds maintenance company, or you're an engineering company. We want the best of the best. And so that's someone that can tell me there's nobody out here that can do it better than I can, and they can demonstrate that under a contract. So just kind of keep that in mind, because the people you're talking to, that's what they're looking for. So if you come in generic, wide open, chances are you're going to be put in a generic wide open pool, and you just have to wait for a time to compete. Those that are specific are the ones that they're trying to figure out, that's the best machine shop. What is it that we have coming up that we need to have done? Then that's who I'm going to issue that PO to. So be specific.
That's great advice. Okay, so what questions do you have? I'm determined to throw these papers on the floor.
No questions.
All right, so let me ask another one if I can get my
There's
papers
one.
off, keep them off the ground. So if you're not,
question.
oh, we did have a question. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. I didn't see you there. All right, great. So there's the mic.
Merit Construction Management. I've done a lot of NASA work over at Langley Research Center. Just won the $3 billion MAC 2 and a $300 million MAC out in California we just turned in. Does NASA and DOE require top secret clearances to do work at your facilities?
So at NASA, I will tell you, it depends on the work that you're doing. So every contract does not require that. There's some that only a part of the contract, depending on what you're actually doing, will require that. So not every contract will require that, but it will state it in the RFP if it is required.
It's the same way in DOE. All contracts are contract specific, depending on the need to know whatever's going on at the contract. Where do you need to go? Behind what fence will determine sort of what clearances you need. So it's based on a contract, and generally it's not transferable from contract to contract. So whatever's in that statement of work and whatever the specific classification of that work is, for that specific contract will determine the clearance that's necessary.
Okay, thank you. What other questions do we have? Oh, got one right here. So here comes the mic.
So we are an SDVOSB firm. On November the 27th, you're having an SDVOSB outreach event in Washington. We called 3 days, and we tried to sign up 3 days after that advertisement came out, and it's full. So we're trying to get in, we're trying to talk to you folks, and I guess it's probably for the next event now. But if you could work on maybe getting a bigger room or whatever needs to be done for those events, we would love to come and talk to you. But there's some events and it's just tough to get into them. It's unfortunate.
I understand. That filled up extremely fast. I apologize for that. We did an email blast. We have room for 190 people, I guess, in the conference room. We had 400 people sign up, so the fire people wouldn't let us do that. Here's what I'll do for you. You can take my card. You can have a one-on-one meeting in my office any day of the week that I'm there. The next available appointment will be November 20th. That's when I'll be back in DC. Thank you very much. Anybody else that needs an appointment, the same way. I usually am in the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays, anytime from 5:30 in the morning to 5 in the evening. You're welcome to drop by the office and we'll have a little chat. Coffee bars downstairs.
You're still working those Air Force hours, 05:30 to 17:30. So that's right. Once an airman, always an airman. There you go. Outstanding. What other questions are out there? Did I see? I thought I saw a hand go up over here. So here's a question for both of you. Both of you emphasize relationship and past performance, and I really like the emphasis on doing your homework. So if you're a new business and you want to do business with DOE or NASA, but they're unknown to you, what's the best way for them to introduce their capabilities and begin forming that relationship with you? And we'll start, since we started with you on this one, we'll start with you on that one.
Okay. I think outreach events are a great way if you're just starting. Typically at most events, like for example here, I'm here from DC. I also have a representative from our Stennis and NSSC facility. One's at the booth and one's doing matchmaking, but we'll have other representatives here. But we can also tell you, based on your capabilities, what center or who you should be contacting. So that kind of leads you to, okay, you should be talking to folks in Houston or in Mississippi or in Florida. So it kind of gives you, instead of you looking at NASA 10 centers, well, you know what, I don't know. When you go to an event, you see a NASA booth, go up, explain your capabilities, we can tell you, okay, so here's the center you should be talking to. So now you can kind of narrow what center I should be talking to. Or if you're in a certain area and you want to know if there's a NASA presence in that particular area, we can tell you that, again, to help you kind of narrow, okay, who should I be talking to and finding out more about.
I think in terms of past performance, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the SBA change that they're looking at. If you're a subcontractor, being able to use some form of CPARs associated with what you do. I think the other thing, if you're a good contracting officer, I was a contracting officer for 40 years. I'm not going to say I was good, but I would listen to you if you had the capabilities. I don't think the government is hung up on past performance. If you have experience and you can demonstrate that experience in the private sector, especially when you talk about some of the heavy equipment such as cranes and those kinds of things, a lot of that's done in private industry. And if you can demonstrate that to me, and I think most contracting officers will at least listen to you and maybe present you as a subcontractor. So there's, we're not immune to sitting there and talking to you about your capabilities. And I want to encourage you to get in front of the contracting officer, the contract specialist, and tell them what you're doing and how well you've done it and what you've done in the private sector. There are some things, some contracting officers that are a little more stringent than others, but there's some that are lenient enough to take that information that you have and utilize it in their source selection processes and say, hey, this is the best person for the job. At the end of the day, as Charles had indicated before, we're looking for the best people for the job. If you have that capability and you can demonstrate it in another forum, I strongly encourage you to do that to the contracting officer. Do that with the contracting officer. He or she may just have that in their mind that you are the right person for that specific job.
That's great. We have one last question. Got time for one more.
I'm Alan Hauptman with Immersion Design, and we've held a IDQ contract for AE services at Glenn Research Center for the last several years. And in talking with the contracting folks up there, there was some indication that they may change the format for those AE contracts from being center-specific to being regional. And I wondered if you could shed any light on that.
I don't know how this word is getting around. I got this question about 6 times today. So one of the things that NASA's been doing probably for the last couple of years is looking at how we do business. And the entire federal government is being asked to reduce their spend. So one of the things we did is looked at all of our contracts. So we have 10 different centers. Do we need 10 different AE contracts at every center? Or can we do something like do a regional contract and have multiple awards under that regional contract? Do we do one contract that's agency-wide and then all of the centers? So we're going through that kind of an evaluation. We have stepped out in the general construction area, and we're starting to do regional contracts. This is kind of our test bed, so we want to see how that's going to go. And we're trying to collect our lessons learned from that. Depending on what we learn from that, we'll decide what we want to do. So when I first joined NASA in 2006, NASA kind of went through this phase also, and we were trying to do one large security contract for all of NASA. And I know because I spent 2 years as a small business specialist on that board. And we ended up spending about 3.5 years and decided we can't do it agency-wide. We made the centers do their own contract. So again, every now and then the federal government goes through this. How do we reduce spend? How do we become more efficient? And when we do that, we internally have to look at, okay, so how are we doing business? And that's what we're going through now. And so, yeah, some of the centers are being asked, we got to look at our spend, what we're doing. Does it make sense to continue to do it the way we're doing it, or can we do it in a more efficient way?
Okay, well, we are right at time. So, Mr. Williams, Mr. Green, thank you very much. Please join me again for thanking our panel.
Don't forget, I have some brochures, a directory of our small business program managers up here, and I have a business card if you'd like it.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody.